Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special She Rises Studios panel discussion. Today, we are here to honor the powerful, unfiltered voices behind the anthology The Girl on the Left, a raw, courageous tribute to the woman we once were and the ones who carry us through, and the bold, brilliant woman we're still becoming. So, joining us are some of the incredible authors who share their stories in their collection created by Megan Dirks. These are stories of heartbreak, resilience, transformation, and above all, radical self love. So, to all our authors here, thank you so much for being here. And now, if you want to, let's dive in. So, I have some questions for you. And please note that you have 1 minute per response so we can make sure that we all have time to reply. And if you're good to go, then I think we can start now. What do you think? Okay, great. So, my first question for you is when you think of the girl on the left, that past version of yourself, who was she? What did she believe, fear, or dream of? And for this, I am going to start with Tanya. Hello, Tanya.
Hello, and thanks, Ella, for having me on today, and hi to everyone else. I think for me, it was the girl on the left was someone who was very much into people pleasing, into not understanding her own personal power, in having this, I guess, a definition of what success looked like, needing to be that real hustle and pushing and, um, you know, appearing like everything was working so well and it all had to be perfect without thinking about herself and the impact that that was having.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I think we can continue with Mary.
Thank you, Ella. For me, that girl was someone who really forgot who she was and really started playing into the new roles that were in her life of being a military spouse and um, struggling with being a newly married woman as well, and just forgetting that I was a powerhouse in my own right and rediscovering that. Eventually, it took time and definitely a struggle, but that's who she was. She just forgot who she was.
Thank you so much, Mary. Now, let's go with Diane.
Thing, and I was everything everyone else wanted me to be. I never knew who I was, and I didn't truly discover who I was until I became a life coach and really dived into my journey and my past and who I was. And I finally liked myself and loved myself for the first time.
Thank you so much, Diane. Now we can go with Abby.
So I would say that she was what felt like a very small version of me, and someone who believed that the road in front of her had completely run out.
Thank you, Abby. Now let's go with Megan.
Hey, ladies, thank you, Ella, for having this space for us today. I'd say for me, my past girl on the left was just frustrated, was who she was, and severely under resourced. She had to figure out things on her own when there should have been other layers of support for her at such a young age. So, a lot of self assurance and a lot of figuring things out, which is fantastic. Everything is figure outable, according to Mary Forleo. So I really ride with that for my girl on the left.
Thank you, Megan. Now let's go with Dr. Michelle.
Hi, everyone. So my girl on the left was essentially very misunderstood and emotionally abandoned. And so there was a lot of just kind of trying to search for a way to fill that void. And there was a lot of different ways to do that I attempted to take, a lot of which did not yield a good result. And then, eventually kind of hitting rock bottom and having to really face everything and start to understand, what happened, why do I feel this way, and just separate the perception of what I thought was true to what actually was true, and then begin to heal from that.
Thank you so much. Now let's go with Cheryl.
Good morning. Thank you, Ella. So the girl on the left for me, she was a girl who grew up with a lot of trauma, childhood trauma, and didn't have any coping skills. Didn't have any coping skills to model from my environment. And so she really started using alcohol as a coping skill, and also a severe eating disorder, bulimia, for many years. And that path really just, it just continued until I reached a point where I was about to lose my life, and I came to a real turning point. I had to make a decision. I chose to live. I chose to heal. And I'm thankful every day that I was able to make that choice and to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. We can continue with Risa.
Hi, thank you. So my girl on the left was definitely someone who's filled with a lot of fear, a lot of fear-based actions, and part of that was trying to survive and so desperate to want to be loved and to be cared for. So she got really good at being a chameleon, trying so desperately to just be everything and anything people wanted her to be able to justify why she deserved love and care. And so really growing from that to find that I can give myself that love and care and what that looks like.
Thank you so much. Now let's go with Aisha.
Hi, good evening for me, good morning for you guys. My girl on the left was fitting into cultural norms and all the boundaries that come within that, trying to please my family and everything that I'd been raised within the structure of. And she just learnt that she was much more strong and powerful than she'd ever imagined.
Thank you. Thank you all for your answers. Thank you for sharing your own stories with us. And now, the next question I have for you is, this book is filled with stories of women who face heartbreak, who face doubt, and also rejection. So I want to ask you, what's one thing that could have broken you but didn't? And for this, I want to start with Tammy. With Donnie, sorry.
Hi. No, that's okay. So my story deals with the loss of my previous husband to alcoholism. And at that time, when he passed, I very easily could have just shut down. It would have been really easy to just not work, not move. But I had two little kids, and they needed a mom, and they needed a mom who was functioning and working and helping them to learn how to function and work in this world without their dad. And so I think for me, they were the helping point of that, of I could have given up, and I could have just kind of, I don't know, moved in with family or just kind of let somebody else take over. But in that moment, I chose to show up for them and to show up for myself.
Thank you for sharing that. I think now we can ask Berenice.
For me, very similar to Tawny. When I got to my rock bottom, which was a day that I looked myself in the mirror and there was no light to my eyes, like I didn't ever recognize myself. It was back in the day that I didn't even know that I had ADHD. I'm a late diagnosed woman, like many out there, who lived masking and not knowing, not connecting because we pretended to be someone else to be accepted, right? To conform to the norm. And when I realized that I was so disconnected that I was not showing up for my son, that for me was the turning point. It was the moment that I was like, I don't want him to live a life alone like I did. So I decided to show up for myself so I could show up for him, because it always starts with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernice. That's so valuable. Now, I want to ask you, Megan.
Yeah, as far as any point where it felt really close to breaking or broke, I think we all have those moments for sure that we're covering. And for me, it was dark. It was defeated. It was suicidal tendencies that I was so torn between frustration and just being done versus I'm very, very ambitious in business and in my personal life too. And there was a million things I wanted to do. So for me, it came down to which one was going to outweigh which. And for me, turns out I had a lot of things I still wanted to do. So I kept pushing.
Thank you, Megan. Now, I want to ask Abby.
So I think the same as everyone here, we've had probably many moments where we feel like we could have broken. But I think the more kind of recent and relevant one for me is stepping out of my policing career to honour my health and a new way of living, because that was once my final destination and I didn't have a plan B. And it made me realise how much of my identity was pinned on this one thing that had now been crumbled and broken in front of me. And to go from feeling like I was somebody to nobody, and to have to really like see what I was made of in that void and in that like absolute nothingness. It's almost like building myself back up from the complete ashes and to create a second chapter of life.
Thank you so much, Abby. Now, I want to ask you now, Risa.
Yeah, I think for me, the point that could have broken me, but thankfully I chose something different, is when my son, my very first child, so I was a first time parent, at 3 months of age, stopped eating, and no one would listen to me, and very easily could fall back into that fear based living and just kind of shutting up and being quiet, like I was kind of taught how to do so much throughout my life, which would have led to probably potentially losing my son and losing myself in the process much more than I already had. And it could have broken me, and I chose something different. And he is about to enter middle school now. So we're all living and thriving.
That's amazing, Risa. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you now, Ayesha.
I think it's that big thing called failure that hits you in life, and that really makes you feel like you've lost yourself, your identity, and you really question what value you can have moving forward or how to rebuild it all. And I think very similar to both Abby and Megan. Um, Firstly, it was about making that choice, right? Do you live or do you die? And it is a positive choice that you make. And if you're choosing to live, how are you going to do it? And I think in the end, the ambitious one, the ambitious side of me that wanted to live so much life pushed through. And it was really about being a phoenix rising from the ashes, which at the time can feel really scary, but it's also one of the most liberating feelings in the world to be able to literally have a blank canvas and go, well, actually, what do I want my life to be now? Because everything's gone anyway. It means that I can have anything I want.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, let's go with Diane.
In me. And as you asked the question, I really thought about it. I really think being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 22 and being told you can't have children and you have the miraculous birth of your child 3 years later and you didn't give up and you were in a wheelchair. I was in a wheelchair for 6 months and I fought and I wouldn't give up and I wouldn't let it beat me. And I'm so proud of myself that I finally said no more. And I didn't realize who I was and what I could be. And once I became a life coach, I was able to realize there's more to me than just multiple sclerosis. I can be more than just that.
Thank you for sharing that story with us, Diane. Thank you. Now, I do want to ask you, Mary.
Thanks. For Aisha, who just spoke, and her saying failure, that really resonated with me. And for me, that was when we went through our first failed IVF, and it was a big failure. And I felt like the biggest failure as a woman. I couldn't produce, and I'd given up my career, and I didn't know who I was anymore. And it was deciding at that moment, okay, so this isn't working. We're going to continue trying for this, but maybe that's not all that life is supposed to be for me, is just being a mom. Not that it's just being a mom, but it was really just being able to embrace and pivot and look at what else I could do, and that, and not wallowing in my self-pity, and just pulling out of that and getting on with it was really the moment for me.
Thank you, Mary. Now, let's go with Tanya.
Yeah, mine was actually in mid 2022 when I suffered burnout unexpectedly. I'd finished my MBA degree. I was in my mid 40s in a senior leadership role in corporate, and thought I knew what my path moving forward was going to be, still in corporate. But when burnout hit out of the blue, it really, opened my eyes to how much I had just been in this masculine energy of just doing, and also doing things that I think I thought I had wanted for myself, but in looking back, it was what I guess people had expected of me as well. And I did a complete shift. I now, I've created my own business, and I now run retreats for women and do life coaching as well as Reiki, and have gone down a completely different path. I'm out of corporate, and I think, the easier thing to have done at that point would have been just to continue in corporate, because starting your own business from scratch is not easy. And a lot of, being in your mid 40s as well, going through perimenopause at that time, and all the things that come up with that, and where you think you have a lot of supporters as well, didn't necessarily turn out to be that way. And it was hard for a lot of people to understand why I completely pivoted and shifted to a different path. And like I said, it would have been very easy just to go, nah, I'm just going to get another job and that's it. But I'm so glad I didn't, and I love what I do now. So yeah, complete shift for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. And thank you all for sharing your own stories. I know that you all have different journeys and different perspectives in each of your journeys. So thank you for sharing that, and I'm sure that we can learn a lot and keep growing with your own stories. And now the next question that I have for you is that I want to talk about that one of the core messages of The Girl on the Left is rewriting your own narrative. So I want to ask you, what part of your story did you reclaim by writing it down and sharing it? And for this, I am going to start with Risa.
For me, again, that part of the fear based and the lack of taking up my own space and really claiming that I have purpose, I have value and worth in my life. And really, that moment, as I talked about, kind of that could have been a breaking point, was really powerful in me kind of claiming that space and saying, hey, I do have a voice that does matter. And really speaking to that and really figuring out who I was, not for anybody else, but purely for me, and how I wanted to live my life, and also now what I wanted to leave for my children, and to empower them to be able to know their own worth, know their own value, that they deserve for them to love themselves and to speak to that unapologetically.
Thank you, Risa. Thank you so much. Now let's go with Megan.
So for me, and this is a really interesting question for me because I just was interviewed recently on leading the whole project, and what came up was, what came up for me putting my story out there too. And I've had previous speaking engagements in the past. I've had led workshops and done all the things, but usually I was hired or selected for sharing a very specific small part of my story. So when we created this project and everybody was able to put their chapter together however they wanted, this was the first time I had creative freedom to reclaim my story and include all of the narratives that I wanted to combine to really present my past chapters. And that was a huge difference than being told, here's a grand talk to us about this specific piece of your life for 20 minutes. So, yeah.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Megan. I'm sorry. I was going to ask Abby, and now let's go with Abby.
So for me, it was about reclaiming who I was as an individual, as a person, who Abby was, because I'd been in an institution for a very long time where you are stripped of that identity. So in the police, you kind of give up your own identity for a collective identity, and it's one. And there's a lot of restriction in that, like you can't really have a public voice. You're not supposed to share any of your own opinions or to be seen to take sides. Like there's so much scrutiny, and it's almost like being in a cage. So for me, putting my story down was reclaiming my identity, my voice, my expression, my authenticity outside of a role that once took that away. And it was quite frightening to do that, but it was also really empowering. So I was so grateful for that opportunity. And there was fear around it at first, like a lot of fear of like, this feels really uncomfortable. But now that I've stepped into it and done it, I think it's only just really helped me step into that more. So I'm so grateful of that opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Abby. Now I want to ask you, Dr. Wu. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Now you go.
What was the question? Because I was driving.
It's okay. I wanted to ask you, based on that, one of the core messages of The Girl on the Left is rewriting your own narrative. So the question was, what part of your story did you reclaim by writing it and sharing it?
Yeah. So that story is only a little bit of my life, and then part of my own healing journey and what I love doing and coaching with other people is actually, and for each human being, we can actually reclaim, and we literally can go back to all the stages of our lives, even to our ancestral history, and even pre-birth when you're an embryo. I mean, we can reclaim all of that. We can rewrite all those narratives. You can't go back and change it, but you can change the story. So I love that. So what I wrote in The Girl on the Left is just that little part of that story. The war, the post-traumatic stress. Yeah. But there's so much that really, yeah, then you go back, and then there's wounds from, childhood. There's wounds as a teenagers. There's just experiences that we've never processed. And to be able to process it, because we never knew you even had it. It was kind of just, you just had to survive, You just kind of said, oh, it's okay. I just got to keep going. But when you actually have the time, well, when life kind of gives you a crisis where you're like, oh my goodness, I have to deal with this now, then if you can get the help that you need, it's pretty amazing, because then you feel whole again. There's no little parts of you that are repressed or suppressed or left behind. So yeah. So that whole narration and rewriting, it's one of my biggest words, rewrite our entire story. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks to you. And now I want to ask Tony.
Well, I love that I'm going after that because being part of this entire project, the writing of the story as well as the podcast, really held up a mirror to make me get honest with my bullshit about how I've been dealing with this trauma in my life. I masked a lot of the grief and pain with anger. And then also with just shoving it down and focusing on the stuff that's good in life, and the things that I was rewriting and the things that were going better. And the thing with trauma is if you don't, it's going to deal with you at some point, whether or not you want to deal with it. And so I was in and out of therapy. Mike died 7 years ago, and I've been in and out of therapy. And it's like I would get to this point in therapy where I would start to feel again, and then I would not go for a year. And doing this process and going through the process of this project held up a mirror to how not healthy I was. It was actually I was listening to Samantha's podcast when it came out, and she was describing this trauma in her life that she had been through, and she was so healed, like she was so healthy and spoke with such peace about something that was so painful. And I was like, I don't have any of that. Like I am nowhere near being in a place where I can share my story with that kind of peace and healing. And so I was like, well, if I ever want to be able to, then I have to go back and I have to stay in therapy until I can. So it really, this process has made me learn how to finally deal with the things that I've put off for a long time. Because as much as I have grown and as much as I have done, and I'm excelling in career and I have a wonderful new husband and the kids are thriving, but until I'm healed, I can't go to that next level for myself. So it's really held up a mirror to that and helped me kind of learn what I need to keep working on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I want to ask you, Berenice.
A lot about relationships and how my relationships played out in my life because of all the trauma, because of all of the masking, all of the hiding, and pretending to be okay when things were not okay, taking on too much. And on the book, I do talk about how I needed to separate myself from family members, my dad, my mom, because I needed to heal and be able to move past it so I could, hold space and be able to have good, healthy boundaries with them. And last month, my dad passed. And it was amazing because it was right after I had written the book. We're in the process of doing that. And I had thought a lot about it during it. And when was the time for me to be there for him, I was able to do so with an open heart, forgive everything that I had inside of me already forgiven, but I was able to verbalize that to him. We were able to reach a new level. And I do think that a lot of it is because I rewrote that story, right? I put it down, I moved through it. And like Tanya was saying, the only way for us to heal our traumas is to actually face them, is to go through them. And when you do a work like this of writing down how you've been affected, how your trauma shows up for you, things of that sort, it really allows you to get to the next level, and at least that's what it did for me. So I'm very thankful for being a part of this movement and being able to appreciate, who I was, even when I had to take that space, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here today. So the girl on the left does deserve our recognition instead of just, shame or disappointment of not being at the same level before.
Thank you. Thank you for opening your heart and sharing such an emotional and personal journey. Thank you. Now, I want to ask you, Ayesha. Oh, you're muted, Ayesha.
Hi, sorry, you cut off when you said my name, so I wasn't sure. I was
Oh,
like
sorry.
leaning in, I'm wondering who you were asking.
Sorry.
So for me, I've always been really embarrassed by my stories. Embarrassed about how my life has played out, about all my near misses with death, because I've had a lot of friends over the years who've said, why can't you just be normal? Why can't you just be normal in the way you live, or why is it always you? So I've always been quite afraid of sharing my story just because I was embarrassed of it. But I was in London last summer, and I was talking to somebody during a friend's birthday party, and we were just talking about how we've chosen to live life. And she said, you know what? I would love to see your story written in a book, because we don't have enough women talking about the way that they've decided to live, living differently, or the things that they've overcome. We as women don't get enough of those stories to read and be inspired by. So it would be great to read yours. So when this opportunity came up, that was the first conversation that I'd remembered. The other thing is that I turned 40 last year, and to celebrate my 40th birthday, I decided to do something to support 400 women to step into their own personal power. And I've done that through a variety of different things, but part of that was to push me to share my story in case it did help people, help women around me just to understand that failure is a part of life. Things go wrong. And sometimes things definitely don't happen in life the way that we expect them to, but you can always learn a lesson from it and become stronger and better and step into your power from that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I do want to ask you, Dr. Michelle.
So one of the things that I have learned over the years is that healing and recovery, which is part of reclaiming, your story, is a journey and a process. It's not necessarily something that's just going to happen one time and be done. And I've actually been, like Megan, I've had speaking events, things like that, where I've had opportunities to share parts of my story. And I've actually been a part of a few other projects very similar to this, where I've been able to share parts of my story. And I'm so grateful for all of those. But the reason I'm sharing that is exactly like Alicia was saying, not enough people, and especially women, are hearing these stories. So there is, every single time I share my story, every single time I get an opportunity, whether it's a speaking event, a podcast, a book, or anything like that, it's taking another piece or reclaiming another piece of my true identity, letting go of the past and claiming who I really am, as well as giving back to other women and showing them that it's possible. And what really kind of takes that deeper for me is a piece of my journey is reclaiming my identity of who I was educationally. So I actually dropped out of high school halfway through my senior year. A lot of that had to do with loss of my brother and a bad relationship I was in. And then also breaking a promise to him, and in part of me trying to make him proud or make his memory proud, I went to college and eventually got to the point where I went for my doctorate degree. And that was something I was led to do, not for my education, not for career, not for anything other than leaving a legacy, showing others that it's possible to not just overcome, but go beyond what you thought was possible. And so every single time I get opportunities like this, I get to show other women, just like Alyssa said, that this is possible. Doesn't matter whether it's education, finances, mental health, whatever other area it is, you can overcome. We all have done it. and it's possible for you as well.
Thank you. Now I want to go with Cheryl.
Thank you. So for me, my alcoholism, it really defined me. I felt like that's all I was an alcoholic. I had so much shame around it. I really did hit rock bottom. I destroyed relationships, my family, my finances, my health. Everything I touched just crumbled into dust. And although I've stopped drinking, of course, and I actually just celebrated 4 years and 9 months of sobriety on Tuesday. So I'm very happy about that. But when I was asked to be a part of this project, at first I was like, I can't do this. I can't put myself out there. I'm too ashamed. But then writing my story, it really helped me to learn so much about myself and to really look at, oh my God, like how far have I come? I've rebuilt all these parts of my life that that were broken for me. I mean, my health is, I will say, pretty superior. I have coping tools I never had. I learned to meditate in 2023. It's a huge part of my life. I no longer engage with people who are unhealthy to me. I have rebuilt my finances. My kids and I have a super strong relationship. I'm remarried and very happy. And yes, my life has challenges, but I know how to face them now. I wake up every day with such immense gratitude for what I have, for my second chance at life. And now I want to share my story. I want to share my experience, strength, and hope with other people who need to hear that they can come back from what seems like the path of no return. So that's where I am today. Sorry about the dog.
It's okay. Thank you, Cheryl. And thank you to each of you for your honesty, for your bravery, and your heart. I think that the girl on the left, as I think I've said a few times, is way more than a book. It's a movement, as you're showing here. It is a mirror, and it is a message to every woman who's still becoming. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the community you've created. This is truly special. And now to our audience, you should know that The Girl on the Left is available now on Amazon. So if you've ever doubted yourself, felt like you were behind, or wondered if you were enough, you should know that this book will remind you that you always have been. So thank you so much, ladies, for your words, for your stories. And to everyone, we'll see you at the next She Rises Studios event. And until then, please keep rising. Thank you all.